courtesy of the red, white, and blue.
It's time for Veterans Issues, the show that brings you information about veterans, military, and their families. Now here's your host, Ken Rollins.
Welcome to Veterans Issues. Appreciate you tuning in this week. Today's guest is a familiar face in the area. Mark Franks is going to be with us, so you stay tuned, get you a pen, be right back. Welcome back to Veterans Issues. Appreciate you tuning in. Today's guest is a friend of mine and actually long-range family. His name is Mark Franks, and you'll know him. And so we're going to welcome to the show. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks for having me, Ken.
Yeah, good to have you out here, buddy. We've been trying to do this for a long time. Now you got a TV show here locally, but that's not what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about your video business, and you've got some things here. But I've seen this signs around all over the place about it, and I've wondered about what you do. And we've never talked about exactly what it is, but I think I know some of it because let me see that big spool there. Mm-hmm. I'm very familiar with that item that a lot of people out here in our audience probably don't even know. That's not rims for a small car. That's what I used to record a lot. I think it was a Keystone. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh, yeah.
And back in the Vietnam days, a lot of guys had those, and they would use them to film. And then, of course, mine was used around home just to make people mad because they didn't want to be on. Nobody wanted to be on film. But that's you have a business that just you work with these. What do you do? I think you transfer from one to the other, but what do you transfer from and to?
Yeah, what we do, Ken, is we a lot of people have these old memories on like
that's
back
a
in
VHS.
VHS tape, reel to reels, and then the progression of the tape went on down all the way from this to this, and then they phased them out.
For the camera, they can't jump that far.
And so they showed that and had the memories there. These go back to around 1950 and up on people's memories. And so what we do, this technology is obviously growing old. It's getting brittle and it's fading away. And so we take it and sharpen it up, sharpen the color. On these, we actually add music to them because most of these are silent. So we'll add music, we'll sharpen the color and put them on good high-grade DVDs for long life. And then on these, we'll sharpen the color and the sound and put them on DVD. You're looking at possibly 100+ year shelf life for your future generations to have these DVDs.
Now, you can take somebody finds this in the attic, in the chest or something, and they don't know what's on there. You can transfer that reel to reel to what?
To a DVD or a computer file if they want it. But most people want the DVD so they can watch it with their family in their living room.
Because one of the things that this show has done, we had a lot of veterans on here, and a lot of people that you see at the opening have passed on. And one ex-prisoner of war, we had Pearl Harbor survivors. But at the funeral, at the memorial service, they'll be playing this show with the volume down. They'll be playing it, showing their grandfather animated. Mm-hmm. And when you got something like you're doing here, to see a 8x10 picture or an old 5x7 or small picture of their grandfather, but to see him walking outside in the yard near a wheelbarrow or something, just takes it to another level than what you're just that.
It does.
Straight photo.
It really does.
And I can't imagine somebody finding an old reel and say, let's go find what this is. So then they call Mark. And that number that I got on here, is this the correct number? 831-7169?
That's correct. That's correct.
256-831-7169. And you pick it up or they bring it to you?
Either way, we could do pickup service or they can bring it to our Snow Street, Oxford office at 919 Snow Street.
Okay.
Right over there in the Daphne Plaza. And they can call us and schedule a time to bring it in, or we can come and pick it up from them if they're people that may not get out much. We try to do that too.
That'd be something. We're going to have spring, I promise you. But when they're doing their spring cleaning, they run across something. And the old reel-to-reel thing, like the cameras that we had, that we used to take to Walmart to have it developed, you don't do that.
Well, we actually do. We'll have people that will find some of the original undeveloped film from the 8mm, reel-to-reel cameras, and they'll need it developed, and we can actually do that for them through some companies that we've connected to. It's rare, but it does happen.
A woman was over at Walmart one night having some film developed, a friend of mine, and it was old black and white pictures in the 50s, 56, 58. Bear Bryant's first coaching game at Mobile Stadium against LSU, and he lost like 13-7. But to see him in those pictures, and I got them. She had an extra set made for me, but she just said they'd been in a box, shoe box, and she was just going to have the film developed to see what was in there.
Right.
And we saw it at the same time. She said, "Oh my God, that's Bear Bryant," So I don't know. You want to buy them for under $1 million? But that's the kind of thing you're doing with it. But when you see this, you're rolling it and looking at it for the quality stuff. You're getting to see history.
History, yeah, especially local history. Anniston, Alabama, downtown Noble Street, from back in the 50s. A lot of footage of the Jubilee. They had that big Jubilee celebration in Anniston, where all the men grew their beards, and wore the bolo ties, and the women wore those long old pioneer dresses. And my grandfather was in that. My dad was in that. And I actually collect that footage from customers when they allow me to, because I see a lot of that on their reels. And I'll ask them, so how do you mind if I keep that little clip in my computer? And one day I will capture my family on there, because they're on there in different people's video views, I'm sure. And so I look for that to capture, because my family's passed on. And like you said, to have the grandfather that's passed away or the great-grandfather animated on video is important and really the next level. Mm-hmm. So I'm in search of certain things in my job.
I went to a family relative's funeral here a while back that you was involved in, and it had her name on the program, and she performed with the piano and vocal. That was so moving that she had just passed away to have that there. Mm-hmm. That pictures are fine, but tapes and videos are a whole nother game. So if somebody's out there got some old video that they want to put it where they can put it in a cassette, in a DVD player. Everybody's got a DVD player.
Absolutely.
And you know what? A lot of people got them, don't even think about them in their vehicle. If you got a new vehicle.
Yeah.
You got a DVD player in there.
They're in there.
Yeah.
And computers will usually play the DVDs too, so they can watch it on their computer or their DVD player.
Absolutely. That's just awesome. And what are those little ones there?
The little ones, the progression went from VHS to the camera getting smaller, because we used to carry these big cameras around for these in the 80s, late 70s. Then they went down to these mini cameras, but went into an adapter and then went into the VHS player. So many people will recognize those. We transfer those just like these.
But that's more for like a commercial camera for a TV studio or somebody.
Well, actually, this was a home use. It was all this is home use stuff. It went from the regular VHS to a small camera, and it's called the mini VHS. Or VHS-C for compact. All right. Then it went to the camcorder tapes, the Sony camcorders type things. Then it got even smaller into this in the 2000s, and then they of course phased them out, into digital once they went from this to the hard drives.
Well, we gotta go pay the bills, or we'll never see a tape. We're gonna come back and talk more with Mark regarding this and some other things. We're gonna talk about his granddaddy. Stay where you are. Get a pen. Be right back. Welcome back to Veterans Issues. We're talking with Mark Franks, and we're talking history. We're talking about the old videos, conversion, I guess I want to call it. One of the things that you mentioned, you went over real fast. I was reading an article that had about your granddaddy. He was in World War II. Give me some briefs about him. He had an interesting career.
Yeah, he passed away when I was 4, so I never really remembered much of him, but I've heard a lot of stories about him and stuff. And he actually, my grandmother passed the article on to me, and he was interviewed in the hospital in Talladega in 1973. And they said basically that the topic of the article was insignificant person shares shining moment. and he felt insignificant because he just kind of had a plain life and not much, just not known for very much, just a kind of normal average guy. But he shared history as being in the first military vehicle that rolled into freed Berlin after the war. And so he's actually was in the first vehicle that rolled in there as an occupying force or a freeing force. So it was a pretty neat little story.
I just can only imagine what that is. And you remind me of something, so I'm going to make myself a note right there. And I just don't want to forget it. But when these guys, these granddaddies, you can put all the history you want to there, but if you can spend 5 to 10 minutes listening to them, looking at their stories, I sit here and talk with people who landed the first wave at Normandy, the ones that were the guys that's on my video opening. Some of them were there in Pearl Harbor the day it was bombed and have their own stories, and their stories of Pearl Harbor is as vivid to them as you and I just coming out of the control room here a while ago. So it's there's a lot of history out there. If people but they don't want to talk about it. Most of them don't. The old timers don't. The Vietnam veterans. Now you telling me in some of the things you do, you get a lot of Vietnam veteran coverage that the guys took. What did they use mostly? Was it VHS?
About 3 different formats the Vietnam guys did. Of course, that was before the VHS tapes, but the Vietnam guys commonly recorded footage on these small reels, and they'd buy the little 8mm video cameras pretty cheap overseas, and they'd buy those and they'd video different things and they'd mail it back to their wife or girlfriend and or they'd bring it back with them when they came. And of course, I'm sure
one to the wife and one to the girlfriend.
Hope not. But I'm sure the military had to check this stuff. But certain things got out and certain footage is videoed, and most of it's just scenery. But every once in a while, I get to see warplanes going over, and had a guy. And we also transfer photos and slides to DVD, photo slides, and some of the Vietnam footage is on slides. And they'll take those little 35mm slides, and they took different Vietnam shots, and they brought that home. And one of the most interesting ones I saw was 3 helmets laid out on the ground with holes in them in the helmets. And I asked the guy, I didn't know the story, so I asked the customer, I said, what's the story behind those helmets? And he said, well, those are 3 guys that we saw come in and arrive in our unit, and those 3 guys didn't make it. And he said, so we took the picture of their helmets to remember them, and it's pretty just interesting stuff.
Yeah, there's a friend of mine, Jim Hibbett's out here in Alexandria. He had some of the guys that was in his unit come to town when we put up the Vietnam Wall, and one of them from Mississippi, and he stepped out as he landed, as he stepped off of the plane there in Vietnam, he got shot just getting off of the chopper. They went into Ia Drang Valley with General Hal Moore, and as he stepped off the plane, off of the chopper, he got shot. He was like, welcome to Vietnam.
Wow.
And let's see, I want to make sure I got, I saw the different types tape out there. Is there any kind of service that we haven't talked about here today that somebody might, you said you've seen some that had Iraq veterans. What are they using?
Well, now most of those are going to be your VHS tapes or those small ones that went next. Those are the ones that a lot of the Iraq veterans and Desert Storm and things like that, Afghanistan, they had some footage that we see sometimes from over there from personal family or personal shoots that ended up in the family's hands. Some of the guys that filmed the footage are passed away. And so the mom wants to remember the last moments that they captured,
Well, one of the things that, if you see the terrain, like in Vietnam, you see some of it, you see the swamps and some. Of course, Vietnam had just everything that the United States got. We had mountains, and we had kind of desert type places, and we had swamps in the Saigon area. So it depends on it, but you could see in the background and tell what kind. But in the Desert Storm, the Iraq pictures that I've seen, it was just that was such a brutal climate that they were in, from the sandstorms to the dust, that everything. I remember when I lived in Florida, it was hard sometimes not to find sand in your food that you started to eat. if you lived there for any length of time, and you always had it in your carpet, and you had it in your carpet in your floor of your vehicle, and over there the sand was just everywhere, and breathing it, and you could just take a picture of the background and say, man, that was just awful living conditions. Same thing with Afghanistan, but that's an awesome thing. Let's see, I want to make sure I got everything around. When you're talking about the footage that you have in the 50s or whatever in the Anniston area, have you ever come across some that you said, Ms. Jones, you won't believe what I found. I saw your old house, or somebody, you saw something in there that specific to a person that you've told them about? Or
Especially businesses, because you see the old businesses, the way they used to look, and things like that are kind of significant to certain people now. You know, when I can tell them, hey, look at what your block used to look like, or look at what your neighboring store used to look like, or look what your old business used to look like, because some of them don't have photos or anything of that kind of stuff. That's pretty neat little side stories.
So that picture you got there, what is that?
This is being in the business I'm in. I get to be around a lot of different kind of people, and so we got to meet Mike Huckabee a few years ago, and that was kind of interesting. It was one of the most significant people that we've got to meet, and that was pretty neat.
That guy's got some philosophy. He's got more common sense than any one person I've ever seen in the public office. Well respected, a great man of God too. He's just a good people.
Really pro-veteran too.
Yeah. And speaking of that, one of the things I just wrote a word down here called just. A lot of veterans out there, and this is for all you veterans out there, you don't use that word just. You'll hear a lot of people, oh, I was just in the artillery, I was just in transportation, I was just a medic, or I was just in a shelf. It takes all of that to make a war, but don't ever let me hear a veteran say, I was just. I want you to take that out of your vocabulary. A lesson from me to you today that is just so wrong, because there was no just. If you were part of the military, you were serving and we don't lessen any of them if you were in transportation. So I don't know how much time we got here. Okay, well we're gonna have to take a pause here and go to the other. We're gonna have to say goodbye to our guests. And Mark, don't be a stranger. You got some other stuff you want to talk about? Come back anytime. Okay. Glad to have you on here today. Thanks for doing that.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for doing what you're doing here too. We got to go to a break, come back, and we'll have news that you can use. Stay where you are. Welcome back to Veterans Issue. I do appreciate Mark Frankson coming in and doing the show today. And if you need any of those things, if you didn't get the phone number, just give me a call and I'll put you in touch with Mark. Don't forget to write this on your calendar. May the 28th at 11 a.m., Centennial Memorial Park. Up in Anniston, you'll be able to find it. If you go up, say 16th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, and then that Ken Rollins Way, and then you go. That's where the park is. It used to be 17th, but anyhow, we're going to have the Memorial Day service there. I'm bringing Steve Chappell back up from Augusta, Georgia, and we'll have Ryan Robertson back, and we're going to have a great service and memorial service there on the 28th at 11 a.m. And I want to remind you that Superior Hyundai is a sponsor of the show. Mac Huckabee, George, all those folks up there, they want me to remind you about the discounts for the military. $500 with a DD-214, $500 for military first responders, and take that DD-214 with you. Now, if you tell them you saw it on this show, Veterans Issues, they'll give you another $500. So I just saved you $1,000 on a new Hyundai. So keep that in mind, and they're great people, and I thank them for sponsoring the show. The VA hotline number is 855-948-2311, 855-948-2311. That's the one that President Trump installed in the White House. But the crisis line, 1-800-273-8255. And when the voice comes on, press 1. 800-273-8255, press 1. Now that's if you know of a veteran that's in stress, want to harm himself, herself, or others, that's the number to call. And here's the number, that address I want you to write down. It's a website, woundedwarrioralabama@gmail.com. Wounded Warrior Alabama, one word, @gmail.com. Phone number 256-458-2715. That is the Wounded Warriors, but you don't have to be a wounded warrior to get help. As we speak today, they're out building a ramp for an 86-year-old veteran that he's fell through the cracks. There's no unit out there, nobody that will help him. He's in a wheelchair, can't walk, but he can ride around his house in the wheelchair, but he can't get off the porch. He can't go to the mailbox. But after they get through out there in the next day or so, he will be able to go to his mailbox. That thanks to Ross Winter put his money in there to start with, but this is a 501c3 organization. They do great stuff, and I want you to remember them. They even got service dogs. They're working with a company out of Colorado for service dogs, the big Labradors. And now, you folks that go to Lowe's and get your military discount in the past, you'd show your card or whatever. No more. They won't take your card. It's a corporate decision, and all you got to do, though, is go on to your website of Lowe's. It's lowes.com/military. Lowes.com/military. Type in your information. Next time you go to Lowe's, you need a discount, they'll ask you for your phone number, and that's all you have to do. You don't even have to pull a card out, and it works. I've used it many times. So remember that when you go to Lowe's. And I want to commend Home Depot for stepping up to the plate to help this group with that ramp that they're building for this fella, because when they found out about it, I put my finger in the face and called them out last week. But Ashley down there, my head of my fan club, she let me know that they were watching, that they're coming to they stepped up. They're going to furnish the material and the work to get that done. So that's a great thing. We're finishing the Firefighters Memorial this week, and we'll be talking to you more about that. And still need wheelchairs if you got them. The law enforcement tag, think about that when you go get your tag. The law enforcement tag, anybody can have it. It don't have to be in law enforcement, but it does help us build a memorial that we're doing up there in the park. Let's see, this week we do need drivers for the DAV van. If you give me a call if you're interested in that. And this week's salute does go out to all those guys and girls who drive the DAV van to Birmingham, taking the veterans over there every week. So this salute's for you, and we'll see you next week here on Veterans Issues. Salute, we're out of here.